women who are currently serving overseas, I would like to just ask everyone to say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hoorah!
There's always a couple of Marines in there, Navy guys, Navy girls, well, but when it's hoorah, you know who it is, right? It ain't the Air Force, it ain't the Army. So, what I know, I won't. I'll never get out of here. I want to thank our members of the media who are here. I want to thank my fellow veterans. I certainly want to thank our hosts, the Dwyer, or the Veterans One Stop Center here in Buffalo, who administers the Dwyer Program here at Erie County, in Niagara County. We're going to be hearing from some local veteran service officers, specifically Jeff Glatz from my home county of Niagara, who has worked alongside Dan Arnold and the folks here at the One Stop Center. And I know that's a relationship that has gotten just better and better over time. So I want to thank Dan. I want to thank all the folks, the veterans who are here, who assist veterans. The veterans, I always am proud of saying that when we take the uniform off, our obligation to our fellow veterans didn't end at that moment, right? It carries on. And I think as veterans, we always feel an obligation to be able to help other veterans, and I think that gives us a purpose and a meaning, and that's why the Dwyer Program has been so successful. For those that don't know, it is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program, and peer-to-peer it works, and this program has absolutely saved lives, and it has saved lives really using minimal dollars from the state. This is not a big program. It's not we're not talking about, when you think of the budget that was just proposed by the governor, $224 billion. This is we could lose the Dwyer funding from a dollar standpoint and we wouldn't even know it. And yet, that funding has gone to save lives, to bring veterans back from sort of the abyss, get them engaged, help get them jobs, help restore their families, and just make them active members of our American society. When you consider that veterans, the suicide rate is still, I want to say 21 or 22 a day, according to the VA, which outpaces the civilian population. And that always bothers me, because these are people who in many cases went overseas into combat. They survived combat, but they couldn't survive civilian life back here in the United States. And that is heartbreaking to me. It should be heartbreaking to everybody. And when you think of the dollars and the efforts we spend on a variety of things in the state, in this country, reducing veteran suicide and helping them live meaningful lives back home after their service to the country, I think should be a number one priority. And that's why we're here today. Our conference, I wrote a letter recently with myself and Senator Jake Ashby from the Capital Region. He's an Army veteran. Senator Mark Walczyk from the North Country is a veteran, and Senator Dan Steck, also from the North Country, is a Navy veteran. The other three are Army veterans. That wasn't by design. That's who the voters selected when they ran. But our entire conference supports doubling the Dwyer funding across the state of New York, and making it a permanent part of the New York State budget. We were pleased. I do want to recognize last year was the first year in Governor Hochul's first budget. It was the first time that the Dwyer funding had been included in the executive budget. The previous governor had always eliminated it, and the legislature had to put it back in there. And we had called on for years to make it permanent. She did put it in her executive, but we want that to be permanent funding because counties like Niagara, Erie, Genesee, Wyoming, any county that gets this funding, the way it goes, they need to be able to count on that funding year in and year out, And people like the Veteran One Stop Center needs to be able to count on that funding. And really, our veterans who take advantage of the program, they need to know that funding is going to continue for them. And they should be able to know that. And there's no reason this funding should not be able to be doubled. In the proposed budget from the governor, the total state spending on Dwyer is $7,715,000. Again, the budget is proposed is $224 billion. So increasing it to $14 million or $15 million to reduce suicide rates amongst veterans here in New York, I think is a small ask, but it goes a long way. And it means a whole hell of a lot to me, to the Republican conference. And we're calling on, now that the governor has released her budget, we're grateful there was at least the baseline funding, the level funding was in there. But we think it is time to increase that. We know post-COVID that, the challenges, the suicide rates, the depression, the isolation, that's always the big challenge that you're going to hear about, no doubt, from Dan Arnold. And if you talk to anybody in the suicide prevention space, that isolation, and particularly for veterans, is a real threat. And COVID, of course, there was a lot of isolation, not always willingly, but we sort of had to at times, right? Or we were told to at times. And so coming out of that, this is one of those things I think we need to focus on, double that funding. And I'm calling on my colleagues across the aisle. We're here today in Senator Sean Ryan's district. I'm calling on Senator Ryan and others in the Democratic Conference to support this funding. There's a lot of competing interests, but this matters. And the reality is, in a budget, you can always tell your priorities. That's where your money is. And I think that if we want veterans, and if it's a priority to reduce suicide rates, then doubling this money, which will have almost no material impact on the overall state budget, but it will direct money, and it'll have a huge impact in Erie County. It'll have a huge impact in Niagara County. It'll have a huge impact in places like Orleans County, rural counties where, again, veterans, sometimes they're isolated just by where they live. I love rural New York. I love being in Orleans County. A lot of people love living in the country. But when you're dealing with depression or when you're dealing with suicidal thoughts, sometimes that can be challenging because you're not close to services. You're not nearby where you might be able to get help. And a Dwyer program out in Orleans County and in other rural counties like Genesee and Wyoming play a huge factor in making sure that veterans are not alone. And again, I can't thank the Veterans One Stop enough. I got to know them several years ago, even under different leadership. When I first got elected to the Senate, and we brought them into Niagara, and they do a great job here in Erie already. And there's no question they have saved lives. And I do want to thank former state senator, former Congressman Lee Zeldin. He brought this program to New York. He started it. There was no Dwyer program. Joseph Dwyer was a constituent of his who took his life. He was an Iraq veteran, came home, struggled with depression and addiction issues, and ultimately took his life. And that's who the program is named for. And I think, and I hope he would be proud, and his family would be proud to see what Dwyer has grown into. And we want to expand that further to save more veterans and save more lives. So at this time, I want to call up Dan Arnold from the Veterans One Stop to just talk about what this program has meant to Veterans One Stop and the great work they're doing here in Western New York. Dan?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank all the veterans who came out today. I greatly appreciate it. It touches me very much that you guys came out here to support this Dwyer program because it is so important. The purpose of our program is to get veterans integrated back into the community and get them out of their isolation, get them out of their houses, and get them around other veterans. Just like what the senator was talking about, the isolation. It's very important. And it's also to provide a safe and comfortable area for them to be around and people that they're comfortable around, which is usually, I hate to say it, other veterans. Veterans are comfortable with other veterans, and that's why it's so important that the peer-to-peer part is there. How do we conduct our program? We do multiple outreach/events every single month. In Erie and Niagara County, we do about 18 to 20 events a month. I have a great staff, Will over here, and then Grace. They work tirelessly to plan these events, get these events, and get the veterans out there. And these are the veterans out here, some of them that come out to all of our events. And we all have relationships with them. And that's why it's so important. And that's how we run our program. We do it in small groups. We don't do big groups, 100, 200 people. That just doesn't create the peer support side. It doesn't bring that closeness in. So that's how we want to do our stuff. The type of stuff that we do stuff like rock climbing, hikes, walks, curling, bowling. Bowling's a great one. We have a 101 World War II veteran, Mr. Dibble. You know him. You come out, and this guy bowls. I mean, it's just fantastic. He's a great guy. We do small meals. We have dinner. We can just have good conversations. Art expression, so people can get out and get creative. Archery. And then we have some groups, like a photography group. We do scuba. We get people certified in scuba, and they become a team together. Sailing. We have a couple of our sailing guys here. They bonded greatly doing that sailing program that we had. And now we're doing beekeeping. We actually own bees, and we have veterans who take care of bees, and we'll probably start giving away honey here pretty soon. But what I always say, and everybody here probably heard me say it, I don't care about the event. It's not about what we're doing. It's about veterans getting together and being with each other and doing things in the community. That's why it's so important to us. I just have a couple success stories that I want to talk. I just want to read some quotes that people sent me. I think it's really touching and it really gets to the point. That's okay. One, I got one from a lady. I have severe case of MST, PST. I was diagnosed by the VA hospital psychologist in Rochester within the past year. I was desperately seeking help and slowly falling behind in my mental and emotional state. As you know, this pandemic has taken away our freedoms to socialize and truly maintain our mental health. The VOC and the Dwyer Program is the most amazing thing that's happened to me. Throughout the weekend retreat this past weekend, I truly received much needed time to meet other veterans in similar situations and many worse situations. I found myself connecting with them on so many other levels. Another one, the VOC monthly photo contest is something I really look forward to month. It challenges me to go out and take photos, discuss photos with other photographers, and to learn new photography techniques regarding photography. And you can see some of the pictures here that they've taken. I just wanted to let you know we made it safe. We made it back home safe after the rodeo, and that we had a lot of fun. It was nice to meet everyone and see how great everyone gets along and how they are all so welcoming. That is veterans the veterans, looking out for each other. Thank you. This was the highlight of my month. I can't remember what event you went to. Thank you so much for all your support and activities you put out there for us. And there's, sorry about that. This is the one I really want to read. I can personally relate to this. Oh no, sorry. Where's got my last one?
You got all the numbers.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to go into something else. I can't find that one. Why is this Dwyer program so important? Not just because of what I just said. You all heard those testimonies from veterans. You see the veterans here. This is a fantastic showing. But whether a veteran is returning home from a deployment, separated from the service, or has been out for a while, and they still have not found their place in the community, they need somewhere and someone where they can feel safe and comfortable. Veteran the veteran. Otherwise, they may turn to those bad vices that make them make some bad choices. And they isolate themselves, and that's not what we want. We do not want that to happen. There has to be somewhere for them to go and feel comfortable being around other veterans. This is why the PFC Dwyer Veteran Peer Support Program is so important. And I can personally attest to this. I'm a 23-year veteran, retired from the Air Force. I followed my wife around for 10 years after that. She was military. So I was in the military community for like 35 years. That's more than half my life. That's all I really knew. I got out, and my wife was getting ready to retire. We were at a base, and we decided we're going to come back to Buffalo where I grew up. Me and my kids came up here for a year without my wife while she was retiring. I had a hard time. I didn't even know there was veterans around. I didn't even know there was a military base. I grew up here. I was a young kid. I never really traveled anywhere. I was 17. So I was lost. I didn't know who to talk to. I was going from job to job. I was drinking. I was getting into fights, and I wasn't in a good place in my life. And then I was going through Indeed, and I saw a job at the Veterans One Stop. And I said, man, okay, veterans, I'm going to apply for this job. Sadly, it took 3 times to try to get in, but they finally got smart and hired me. and I tell you, it changed my life. And I got involved with Alyssa and the peer support program, and now I'm running the peer support program. And this is one of the greatest things I've ever did in my life, and it turned my life around, it turned my family life around, and I will always be grateful for this program. And that's why it is so important that this funding continues, not just because of my story, but because of all these people here and the veterans out there and the veterans we haven't met yet. And we're always striving to find more veterans, but this program is important. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, buddy. Before I bring up the next speaker, Dan said something I thought about. It's easy to think of the program as certainly beneficial to veterans who come in and need that peer-to-peer counseling, who aren't that bad. But don't think it's not important to the people who are doing the peer-to-peer. Like, it saves them too, right? I bet you if you asked every one of these, the mentors, the counselors, it's important to them. It gives them meaning. To be able to help other veterans. I always felt like getting out of the military, one of the most challenging things is you needed a mission. Every veteran wants a mission, because when you're in, you always have a mission. Even if it's just to make your bed and get in formation, that was your mission for that day. And I think sometimes in the civilian world, it seems like there is no mission. There is no thing that day. And I really think that this program understands that on both ends of that spectrum. Lives are being saved in a lot of ways. Yes. And so I want to thank Dan for sharing his own story as well as those testimonials. Now I want to bring up somebody who certainly knows this program, who knows what it is to support veterans. He's a veteran himself, another Air Force veteran. I don't want to, we got plenty. Right? We got Army, we got Air Force. I don't want to look like we're stacking the deck here, but that's just the way. It's just the way it worked out. But Jeff Glatz is the Niagara County Veteran Service Coordinator. Has worked along with Dan and the folks here at Veterans One Stop, and has been instrumental in helping to grow the program in Niagara. He's a friend and a great veteran and a great person in Niagara County. Jeff Glatz.
Thanks, Senator. When I said Mike to help me out and speak, I meant that Mike.
Bring him on up. He's here.
You want to, Mike? His name?
Mike, yes. So Mike's named after Michael Stokely, who gave his life in '05 in Iraq for our country. I have, once I received Mike as my service dog to train him for myself, I reached out to Robert Stokely via Facebook and connected with him and let him know my story. And so we touch base every now and then on Facebook, and my bucket list does include meeting the family someday.
Cool.
So, yes. I never met your dogs, but what's his name? Her name?
Her name is Nadia.
Nadia. Okay. Extremely valuable. Like the Senator said, I've been with this program in Niagara County from its infancy and the struggles that we've gone through. And I certainly am very appreciative of his support, and it's unending and it's tenacious in Albany, and it has to be when you're the minority trying to make improvements where people aren't listening. The great thing, there's a couple of things I see of this. The increase in the funding is great, and establishing some permanency. When we're looking at setting up an office in Lockport, establishing hours, veterans want something that they know is going to be there today, tomorrow, at the time we tell them it's going to be open and there's going to be somebody there. And when that doesn't happen, those programs are easily put to the side and forgotten because it's just another flavor of the month, and it's not here. So we've established consistency. We've expanded the programs. I meet with Dan, if not in person, certainly monthly and email and they're part of Veterans Court, which is another aspect of this program that I promised that I wasn't going to talk long. So, but that is invaluable to veterans to be able to get a second chance and have somebody supporting them through the court system. So all in all, we just talked today that we've got 2 or 3 other programs that we're going to look at putting out and expanding. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
So just to close, I think for the members of the press, the important thing on that note that Jeff said is it isn't just the funding that flows through Dwyer. Veterans One Stop has been great at leverage. They are able to use and leverage different pots of funding, Dwyer being one of them, to be able to really provide kind of a suite of services. The Dwyer program being one of those, and certainly a big one. But it allows all those services to be accessible to veterans when they come in to the Niagara County Service Office, or to Erie County, or to wherever there might be a Dwyer program that Veterans One Stop administers. Now, obviously, there's other counties across the state that they're not as fortunate to have a Veterans One Stop in there, but they administer the program in their own way, and that's why this program has always worked, is because the Suffolk program doesn't look like the Erie program, because why would it? Those are 2 different counties. The Orleans program probably shouldn't look like the Nassau program, because those are different counties, and the veterans who live there might need or be in need of different types of services, and there's different challenges. And that's why I've always felt this program worked, because the parameters from Albany were minimal. They do exist, obviously, when you're talking about public dollars, but they really allow a lot of fluidity and creativity and autonomy from the county on the ground who's administering the program. That's why it works. That should not change. We need to double the funding, and we need to make it permanent. And with your support and reaching out to your local elected officials, we can do that. Because there's no elected official that I meet that says we shouldn't be supporting veterans. And I really mean that. I think they're sincere about that. But sometimes they don't always know how. What is the best way? It isn't just marching in the Memorial Day Parade or the Veterans Day service or waving the flag. Those are all great. But sometimes it's things like this. It's putting funding into programs that help save lives and make veterans' lives better. And that's what we're doing right here. That's what Veterans One Stop is doing. And I want to thank the veterans who are here. Dan mentioned bowling, and he was surprised as this World War II veteran comes out and bowl. Dr. Long is here, World War II veteran. They don't build them like that anymore. So I'm not at all surprised that they can go out in 100 years and bowl. My generation will be lucky to bowl at 43. But they built them a little differently. So Dr. Long, thank you for being here and for your generation's work and effort. And with that, what I will ask members of the media, while we have the veterans up here, if there's any on-topic questions, certainly happy to take those. And then if we have off-topic, I'll ask the folks, they can sort of exit stage right, and then I'm happy to stay and do off-topic as well. So why don't we do on-topic, if there are any, from any members of the media.
How are you able to reach out to veterans who are isolated, and is it up to the family member to say, hey, my loved one served X in such and such a time, and I know that they're not leaving the house. Do you leave it up to the family to, I don't want to say expose them, but I mean to help them?
To identify, like.
So how do you find, if they're isolated, I take it they're not reaching out.
I'll let Dan maybe talk to how they do it, or what you see generally, Dan, when they come in.
That's a great question, and it's very difficult to get them, because a lot of times we don't know about them if they're isolated, like you were saying. But when we do get word that is happening, we will, we're not going to we may go to their house if we know them, but we just try to reach out and encourage them to try to get them to come to one of our events, the fun events. Say, come out, hang out, see what it's like. Right now I'm working with somebody in this exact situation you're talking about. We keep emailing each other. This young lady keeps saying she wants to come. She says she's going to come, then she backs out. Short of going to her house and dragging her out of the house, I just keep trying to encourage her. And I let her know that I am there for her. And honestly, she just appreciates that. I really believe that. And it's making her feel better already. But going out and getting them like that is very difficult. How we find them is we have a great marketing program that we get the word out on social media, which is one way. And then we also learn in the rural counties the penny saver.
Yeah.
The penny saver is an amazing tool to get the word out, and we've been doing that in our rural county Dwyer programs.
So what is in that ad that draws them?
It talks about veteran-only stuff, events, whatever it may be. You come out to a dinner for veterans only, and that's really the key. And that's how we start a lot of our programs, are veteran-only, because they want to come to veterans. We do family programs, but we do more veteran-only programs because that's where they're going to feel comfortable. Even when they're in isolation, they may not be comfortable around their family and friends who aren't veterans, but if they know they're going to another event with other veterans only, a lot of times that does draw them out.
And Dan, if I could, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the peer-to-peer veteran piece, veterans know other veterans. So when you talk about identifying, a lot of times it's the people behind me who work at Western New York Heroes, who work here at Veterans One Stop. They know the veteran who is isolating. It could be someone they served with. It could be somebody, and a doctor, God bless them, or a psychologist from the VA, no way they're getting that person out or identify. But if Rob Ortt, who served in Afghanistan, and it's someone I served with, I call that person, it's going to be hard for them to just, ignore, and I might have a better chance. And that's why that peer-to-peer is so important. And also our veteran service offices that they work with, they know a lot of times. I'm sure Jeff has identified someone and, hey, have you reached out to Veterans One Stop, or come into my office and we can put you in touch with veteran-centric services. So it's an ongoing issue. There's no question there's veterans out there that we don't identify. But the more funding we are able to have, the more awareness on the program, the more people might be captured. And you sort of gotta be there when they need you. So today they might not be ready, but tomorrow they might be, and you got to be there for them tomorrow.
And Senator, you're exactly right. These people right here.
Those are your identifiers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They do it all.
This is our recon
I
unit
get
right here.
referrals
So
all the time. Hey, Dan, call this person, or this person's interested. Reach out to them. It's a beautiful thing.
any more questions on Dwyer? Okay. All right.